needle selection. So this needle here is mounted on a wooden base just so I can display it. But so your needle, your little 2-inch needle, at the very top of the needle is a beveled edge, and this is referred to as the butt of the needle. And you might think, oh, it has a beveled edge, big deal. Well, I want you to imagine sitting at your machine and inserting a new needle, and you don't have a lot of wiggle room there, right? So the top of your needle is actually beveled for easier needle insertion. Our home sewing machine needles require a flat shank, this area right here, again, for perfect positioning into your needle holder. There's a transitional area right here, which is referred to as the shoulder of the needle. And if you've been buying SCHMETZ needles lately, you've noticed that there's either 1 or 2 bands of color on the shoulder. And we'll talk about those color codes shortly. The length of your needle is referred to as the blade of the needle. And the size of the needle is actually determined by the diameter of this area here of your needle. Along the length of your blade, have you noticed the groove? And the groove has a very important function. The groove is going to cradle your thread so it's not flip-flopping back and forth. Your thread should move evenly and smoothly down the length of the needle to the eye. Then we have the point and the tip, and these change according to different needle types. And on the back side of the needle, you may not have noticed, but above the eye, there's an indentation, and this is referred to as the scarf of the needle. And the scarf has a very important function. When your needle passes through the throat plate, your bobbin hook has to come up and catch that top thread in order to create the stitch. So the bobbin hook actually needs passing room in order to create the stitch. So it just so happens that in the little SCHMETZ ABC Pocket Guide is a wonderful sketch of the sewing machine needle. And so all the parts are identified. Now you're wondering about the SCHMETZ ABC Pocket Guide. Well, this is the foundation to tonight's class. And you can go into the store and say, hey, I took Rhonda's class last night, and I too want the SCHMETZ ABC Pocket Guide, because we're going to cover a lot of information here tonight, and there's just no way that you can remember it all after only a 45-minute class. So go in and get the SCHMETZ ABC Pocket Guide. One of the most important features to the needle is the eye of the needle. The eye of the needle. You can kind of see here, the universal needle. The eye of the needle is about 40% the width of the blade. But looky here, there's 2 other needle types, actually 3 other needle types that have larger eyes. The embroidery needle has a wider eye, and the top stitch and the metallic have not only a wider but an elongated eye. So when you're sewing, what does a larger eye mean to you? A larger eye means there's less stress on the thread as it's passing through the eye of the needle. So if you have problems with threads that are breaking or shredding, well, I've just solved one of your problems. You need to either move up a needle size, or you need to change to a different needle type that has a larger eye. So you'll want to become familiar with the eye of the needle, the eyes of the needles. All right, so next I want to talk about the color chart. And as you can see behind me, I have a color chart. It's an 8-foot banner. I'm coming to you from my sewing room office here in the western suburbs of Chicago. And shouldn't every sewing room have an 8-foot banner of the SCHMETZ color chart? But I also have a smaller version. And in the SCHMETZ pocket guide, you will find on the next page the color chart. So I want to make sure you're familiar with how this works. So right here on the right-hand side of this image, we've got a column titled Needle Type. So we've got all the different types of needles that our home sewing machine can use. And there's a color assigned to most of the different needle types. On the other side, we've got the column that's listed as needle size. So we've got the smallest needle size, which is a 60/8, all the way up to a 120, 125 that our home sewing machines can use. And again, a color is assigned to each needle size. So how this works is the top band of color on your sewing machine needle, on your SCHMETZ needle, identifies the needle type. So what kind of needle is this? Well, yellow. So we look over here under needle type column and we see yellow is a stretch needle. The lower band of color identifies your needle size. So we go over to the needle size column and we look, and rose is a 75/11. So just to give you a couple more examples, if you have a microtex size 80/12, which just happens to be my favorite needle type for all kinds of sewing, a microtex size 80, what color would that top band be? Well, we've got it right here. Purple for microtex, and for a size 80/12, you would see the lower band of color would be orange. Another example, if you have 2 bands of orange, what kind of needle would you have? You would have a jersey needle. Jersey is orange, and if the lower band of color on your needle is orange, well then you've got a jersey size 80/12. Now on this list here, on your needle type list, the very first needle that's listed is the universal needle, and you can see that universal is X'd out. That means universal needles will have only 1 band of color, and that will be the lower band to identify the needle size. So if you have a universal size 80/12 needle, then you've got just 1 band of color, and that is orange, identifying it as size 80/12. So I hope this helps you identify your needles. And actually, it's because of consumers like you that we've got these color coded needles. So thanks to you who have suggested many years ago, well, 2012, that you wanted color-coded needles. So we listened, and SCHMETZ was able to follow through. So the other thing I want to talk about next, before we get into specific needles, is I want to make sure that you know how to read the needle pack, So let's just take this pack of universal needles here, and I want to make sure you know what all these numbers and letters mean. So at the very bottom of your needle package, you've got all these numbers. You've got 70/10, 80/12, and 90/14. So these are your needle sizes. You'll find the needle sizes at the very bottom of your package. And so this is an assorted size of sizes of needles. Above that, have you noticed 130 705H? Have you noticed that before and wondered, what the heck does that stand for? And why is that important? Well, 130 705H is your needle system. 130/705 means that the needle has a flat shank. The H translates from a German word that means scarf, this little indentation here. So needle system 130-705H is a flat shank needle with a scarf that 99% of all of our home sewing machines require. Now, why is that important to know? Well, now when you go to the store, oftentimes you can find other needle systems. You might find an ELX 705. Well, that's a totally different needle system that will not work with your home sewing machine. That ELX 705 you use for your serger machines oftentimes. Or you might find other needle systems like a 134R, a 206X13, a 135X17, and wow, there's over 7,000 different needle systems. So we can be happy that the needle manufacturers pretty much agree that our home sewing machines, that 99% of all of our home sewing machines require needle system 130-705H, which is a flat shank needle with a scarf that most of our home sewing machines require. So I hope that answers one of the questions that you might have. Above that, you've got the needle type spelled out. So this is a universal needle. And now that needles are color-coded, you can actually see the color bands through the clear packaging. So here we've got two needles with green bands. So we know that those are size 70-10. There are two needles here with an orange band. So we know, oh, that's size 80-12. And then finally, this third color band, and it's kind of hard to see here, but it's blue. So we know that's a size 90-14. So that's your universal packaging. But let me just take another sample here. And let's just do another quick review. So at the very bottom, you've got your needle size. So that's a 90-14 on this sample here. Your needle system is 130/705H. So we know that this is a flat shank needle with a scarf, appropriate for most of our home sewing machines. But wow, on that same line, there's a -E that says 130/705H. -E, what does E stand for? E for embroidery. Other letters that you might see would be Q for quilting, or M for microtex, or J for jeans. So there's a lot of information on that line. Again, above the needle system, you'll find the needle type spelled out. On this package here, we've got the German word for needle. Above that, we've got the SCHMETZ name. And again, above that, we can see the two bands of color. So we know that top band of color is red for embroidery, and the lower band of color is blue for size 90-14. So all of that should match up. So I hope that removes some of the mystery about your sewing machine needles. So someone asked, is the color chart available online? And Jennifer just posted the link to the color chart, so you can check that out. Are there any other questions, Jennifer? Let's see. Okay, I think that's it. All right, so that's some very basic information that hopefully will remove some of the mystery about
It looks like Pam raised her hand. Pam, did you have a question? You can go ahead and unmute yourself if you had a question.
I did not. I'm sorry. I must have hit the wrong button when I was trying to get into the chat.
No problem.
All right. So next I want to talk about specific needles. Let's first talk about 5 needle types that are used for piecing and for quilting. What do you think that first needle type is? And actually, this first needle type is used for all kinds of sewing. It's the most popular needle type, and that is the universal needle. Just as the name suggests, the universal needle has universal uses for knits and for woven fabrics. Size 80 is the most popular needle size, followed by size 90-14. The universal needle is the workhorse of all needle types. So keep that in mind. Every needle stash should have universal needles as backup. But I always like to say with SCHMETZ, you have options. So universal is definitely an option for piecing and quilting. There are lots of famous quilters that use the universal needle for piecing and quilting. But let's look at 4 other options for you. We've got the jeans needle. And you might be going, really? The jeans needle? Yes. This is a great needle to use when you're sewing through flannels. You're making flannel quilts, or you're making those heavy, raggy quilts. The jeans, also known as a denim needle, is really fabulous for that. Now, what's so special about the jeans needle? The jeans needle has a reinforced blade. A reinforced blade so that when your needle passes through your fabric, there's less needle deflection with the reinforced blade, so you get a cleaner stitch with the jeans or the denim needle. So again, the jeans needle is a great choice for your flannels and for your heavy, raggy quilts. Another option, popular option for piecing and for quilting is the top stitch needle. The top stitch needle. And as we talked earlier, the top stitch needle has an elongated eye, So there's less stress on the thread as it's passing through the eye of the needle, the top stitch. Another option for your piecing and quilting, well, just as the name suggests, is the quilting needle. The quilting needle. What's special about the quilting needle is that it has a specially designed taper to the point, a specially designed point. Again, it was designed specifically for piecing and for quilting. You probably use the size 75-11 for the actual piecing of your project and the size 90-14 for the quilting of your project. All right, and then that leaves us with my favorite needle type, and that's the microtex needle. The generic name for a microtex needle is a sharp needle. So when your books and patterns say use a sharp needle, they don't mean get a file out and sharpen up any old needle. No, they're referring to a SCHMETZ microtex needle. What's special about the microtex needle is that it has what's referred to as a very slim acute point. Very slim acute point. So with this needle, the microtex, you're going to get the most precise stitches. And with the microtex needle, because of the very slim acute point, the point is going to dull quicker than any of your other needle types. So you'll need to replace the microtex needle more frequently than any of your other needle types. The microtex, of course, is great for cottons, for piecing, and for quilting. And it's especially a great needle choice when you're sewing with batiks. So let's just do a quick review of the 5 needle types popular for piecing and for quilting. So we've got the all-time favorite, the universal needle, which also comes in the widest assortment of sizes. We've got the jeans needle, which has that reinforced blade, so there's less stitch deflection when the stitch is created. It's great for using with flannels, also your raggy quilts. We have the top stitch needle, and we learned that the top stitch needle has that elongated eye, so there's less stress on the thread as it's passing through the eye of the needle. There's the quilting needle, which has the special tapered point. A special tapered point specifically designed for piecing and for quilting. And then finally, we have the microtex needle, which has that very slim acute point. You'll get really clean, precise stitches, but because it has a very slim acute point, it's going to dull very quickly. So you'll need to replace your microtex needle more frequently than any of your other needle types. So 5 needle types for piecing and for quilting. All right, let's just scoot along here with knits. How many of you are sewing with knits? When I first learned to sew many years ago, yeah, remember double knits? I kind of laugh at that. You know, they were the hit of the time, but now knits are so much more fabulous. The weights, the textures, the patterns, the quality of the knits are so much nicer. If you haven't sewn with knits in a while, I encourage you to give knits a try. You know, start with a simple little t-shirt, something really simple that you can fit to yourself. Because I don't know about you, but my body certainly has changed. So a simple t-shirt is a great way to start when you're sewing with knits. So when you're sewing with knits, there are 2 needles that you need in your stash. And the first is the jersey needle, which has a medium ballpoint. The other needle that you need is the stretch needle. The stretch needle. The stretch needle has a narrower eye and a deeper scarf. And it also has a medium ballpoint. So the jersey and the stretch needles both have a medium ballpoint. So if you're sewing with knits, well, how do you know which needle type to use? So the rule of thumb is if your fabric has lycra, spandex, or elastic, start with the stretch needle. That narrower eye and that deeper scarf are going to make a world of difference in your sewing. If it's just a regular knit fabric, like a cotton knit, then start with the jersey needle. The jersey needle. Again, it too has the medium ballpoint. Now, here's what happens. Sometimes stretch and jersey needles are interchangeable. So if you start with the stretch needle and you don't like your stitch quality, well then switch to the jersey needle and you'll probably like the stitch. Vice versa, if you start with the jersey needle but you don't like the stitch quality, switch to the stretch. One of these 2 needles will work for your knit fabrics. So the rule of thumb, and aren't rules made to be broken, the rule of thumb is if your fabric has lycra, spandex, or elastic, start with the stretch needle. If it's just a regular knit fabric, then start with the jersey needle. One of these 2 needles will work for you. Oh, and I also forgot to mention both these, both the sewing with knits needles and also these piecing and quilting needles. Sandy and Jennifer have bundled them up for you. And each bundle, when you buy their special bundles, it includes the SCHMETZ ABC Pocket Guide, and it also includes a SCHMETZ luggage tag, a SCHMETZ luggage tag. So now you can put a luggage tag right on your sewing machine because the days are coming soon, we hope, that we can go to the store or we can go to sewing retreats with our machines and start sewing again. So now you can identify your machine with the SCHMETZ luggage tag. So these bundles that I've just shown you so far are available online. You can just go to their website or you can go into the store. You can put a chat right here that you want to buy the bundles, or certainly you could call too. So you've got options to buy your SCHMETZ needles. There's another needle. Yes.
And I just said there's a couple of questions about sizing indicated on the needles. And then I was going to say to purchase, they can't just chat on here. They can call the store or go to our website and buy them, but just to chat on here won't make a purchase.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, you know what? Let me get through the rest of these needles and then I'll come back to both of those questions about the size and used needles. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about SCHMETZ chrome needles. SCHMETZ chrome professional grade needles. Don't let professional grade intimidate you. Chrome is a premium finish to needles. Chrome resists heat and wear. The chrome needles are currently available only in select needle types in the best-selling sizes. Chrome resists heat and wear. I was a little bit dubious at the beginning when the chrome needles came out, but I love, love, love the chrome needles. You get a smoother stitch. You can actually see the difference in the stitch quality, and also you can hear a difference in how the needle penetrates through the fabric. So if you haven't tried the SCHMETZ chrome needles, I encourage you to give these a try. Now you'll identify the chrome needles on the notions wall quite easily because look at the packaging. It's quite colorful. And the packaging is actually based on the SCHMETZ color chart. So just as the top band of color identifies the needle type, this upper corner here of the color block identifies the needle type. So purple for microtex. Then the lower corner identifies the needle size. So this is a microtex size 68. Here again, we've got that upper corner that's purple, but it's a green lower corner. So it's a microtex size 70. And again, here's microtex, but with an orange. So we know that's microtex size 8012. So I'm not going to go through all of these needles, but I just wanted to bring your attention that chrome is fabulous. And oh, I always like to show the jersey. So the jersey size 80, so that you could see that 2 orange bands is a jersey size 8012. So these are also available. So give these a try. And there's one more needle type that's available, and it's only been available for about 2 years. So I want to make sure you all know about the SCHMETZ Super Non-Stick Needle, the Super Non-Stick Needle. And I think even virtually, you can see that these needles have a different color. They're kind of a gunmetal color or a charcoal gray, and that's the non-stick surface. I can't use the T word for Teflon, but it's a non-stick surface. What's that surface going to do? Well, it's going to resist all those sticky stabilizers, the fusibles, all those gooey things that have a tendency to gum up your needle. The super non-stick needle also has a reinforced blade. As we saw earlier with the jeans needle, a reinforced blade means there's less stitch deflection when the stitch is created, so you get a more precise stitch. The third feature about the super nonstick is the eye is extra large, an extra large eye again. So there's less stress on the thread as it's passing through the eye of the needle. There's only 4 sizes available in the super nonstick, sizes 70, 80, 90, and 100. So when are you going to use the super nonstick? When you do machine embroidery or machine applique, you know, you're usually working with a sticky stabilizer, a fusible or a spray adhesive, and those things have a tendency to gum up your needle. Also, if you're sewing with vinyl, splash cloth, or oil cloth, or hoop and loop tape, the super nonstick is a great needle choice. Now, I need to point out that these needles are still new. I do caution you that if you're using the super nonstick needle on a white or light colored fabric, you need to do a stitch out, a test stitch out first. We've had a couple instances where the finish, or there's a little bit of residue that's still left on the needle, and it leaves spots on your fabric. So if you're going to work with white or light colored fabrics, you need to do a test sample first just to make sure that there's no residue left on your needle. Otherwise, these are great needles, and they've become very popular very quickly. So give these a try. And I know that Jennifer and Sandy have these as a special also. So you just go online to the super non-stick bundles, and you'll find that they have the 4 sizes available with the luggage tag and also the SCHMETZ ABC pocket guide. So they've got some special prices because of tonight. So you'll want to take advantage of that. Okay, so wow, we just covered a lot of needles, and I don't know how you can remember all that, but you'll want to get the little SCHMETZ ABC pocket guide. So you don't have to remember it, but you can just reference the little book. So let's go in and let me see if I can answer some of these questions. All right, so Barb is asking, what kind of needle is for a serger? All right, so sergers frequently require a different needle system, and that needle system is ELX 705. Needle system ELX 705 has not just one groove, but actually has a second groove on the back side of the needle. And this second groove is required for some of the stitches that the serger or overlock machine makes. So how do you know what needle system your serger requires? Most sergers, even old sergers, you need to open up that front cover, and you should find a sticky label or an imprint that will tell you what needle system to use. It'll be ELX 705 or ELX 705 CF, and CF stands for chrome finish, a chrome finish. It's the same needle as an ELX 705, except that it has a chrome finish. Some sergers can also use a regular home sewing machine needle system 130-705H. So you need to take a look at your machine. If it doesn't say, well, go visit Jennifer and Sandy, and they'll be able to help you out with that. Or you can go online and Google the make and the specific model of your serger, and you can find that information for free right online. Don't pay for it. You can find that information for free. Sometimes it's kind of hard to find in the books or in the manuals. Sometimes it'll be right up front, and sometimes it'll be near the back of the manual. So give that a try. Now, I have a baby lock serger, and it says use ELX 705 CF. So yes, that's what I use, but not all the time. I know from just hand testing my serger that I can use a regular home sewing machine needle. So sometimes when I'm sewing with a knit fabric, I might put in a jersey or a stretch needle. If I don't like the stitch quality, well then I'm going to go and just like the manual says, use ELX 705. So you might have some flexibility. If you haven't tried a home sewing machine needle in your serger, you need to gently hand crank the machine to see if it works, because if it doesn't, you're going to be breaking your needle. So yeah, ELX 705 for your sergers. Good question. Thank you. All right, Alpha is asking, what do the numbers on the needles indicate? And she's asking about 80, 90, etc. Okay, so SCHMETZ is a German company, and they work with the metric system. So we're talking about needle sizes, Alpha. You're asking about sizes 80, 90, etc. We're talking about needle sizes. So with SCHMETZ, being a German company, they work with the metric system. So they measure this area of the needle and they come up with a number that will be like a 0.80 or a 0.90, etc. And they take that number times 100 to come up with the numbers that we're familiar with. So that would be 80, 90, etc. But SCHMETZ is not the only needle manufacturer in the world, right? There are other needle companies, and they use sizing systems that are referred to as the Asian, the International, or the Singer sizing systems. Well, many, many, many decades ago, we can be very happy that the needle companies got together and said, hey, let's marry up our sizes and let's standardize it. So a size 80 will always equal a size 12. A size 90 will always equal a size 14, etc. So when your books and magazines say use a size 80 and you've got a size 12, well, that's the same. An 80 is a size 12. Or if your books and magazines say use a size 14, well, that's the same as a size 90. So don't be intimidated by those numbers. That is your needle size. I'll also just point out that here, can you see? Okay, so in this column here, which are your needle sizes, you can see that the finest needle is a size 60/8. 60/8 is the finest needle. The largest needle size that our machines can accommodate range between a 120 to a 125. So that the larger the number, the larger the needle. So thank you for asking that question. I hope that helps. All right, so Diane asked, what is the best and safest way to dispose of worn out or broken needles? All right, well, it happens, right? We wear out our needles or they break. So a lot of people like to collect their used needles in a little prescription, an old prescription bottle. I collect my used needles or broken needles in a little Altoid tin, and I just love to feel that Altoid tin get a little bit heavier. SCHMETZ needles are made from German steel, so the needle itself is recyclable. And so is the little plastic pack that the needles come in. But you really need to check with your community recycling services to find out if they accept needles or that little piece of packing, the little needle pack, because every community is a little bit different. But yes, both the needle and the packaging are recyclable. Okay, good question. And you know, that leads to the mystery question. The question that is always asked is, how long does a needle last? Well, the answer is a needle does not last forever. Needles get tired, they get worn out, and they get dull with use. So you do need to replace your needle. How much sewing can you do with a needle? I don't know. It depends. If you talk to a power quilter who's in tune with their machine and their stitching, they'll say, oh, Rhonda, I change my needle every 4 to 5 hours. They can see the difference. They can hear the difference in the stitch quality. For someone who may not be sewing as aggressively, maybe you change your needle every 20 hours of sewing time. So you know what? It's different for every project, for every machine, every technique. So let's just say on average, A needle lasts for 8 hours of sewing time. Which brings us to, well, while you're sewing, what are the clues to change the needle? There are specific clues to change the needle. One of the first clues is that your thread is breaking or shredding. Now, that doesn't have so much to do with the point or the tip of your needle, but when your threads are breaking or shredding, if you're not changing your needle frequently enough, your thread has probably worn a groove into the eye of the needle. And you don't want a groove in the eye of the needle. A groove is not supposed to be there because what's it doing? It's shredding or breaking your thread. So if that's what's happening, you need to toss that needle, put in a fresh needle. What are other clues that you need to change the needle? Well, what's happening to your stitch quality? You say that you're sewing a straight line. Well, how come your stitches look kind of wiggly squiggly? Your needle's dull. Your needle is begging you to be replaced. Change the needle. Or if you're skipping stitches or your stitches are uneven, yes, change the needle. What's happening to your fabric? If your fabric is being kind of pushed down into the throat plate, if your fabric is snagging or pulling, well, those are all clues that you need to change the needle. Simple, inexpensive solution. Change the needle. And also, your machine is talking to you. That's right, your machine talks to you. If you're just sewing along, and then you start to hear a little clicking sound. Okay, that's a clue. If you're really avoiding that click, it's going to graduate to a pop, pop, popping sound. And if you avoid that, your machine is going to go clunk, clunk, clunk. Now your machine is begging you, change the needle. So needles don't last forever. On average, it's every 8 hours of sewing. So we're not just trying to sell you more needles, but you've spent a lot of money on your sewing machines, right? You spent a lot of money on your fabrics and your thread. So let's not mess things up. You want to replace the needle so that you've got quality stitches that fit with those high quality threads, your high quality fabrics, and your wonderful sewing machines. So easy solution, change the needle. And when you start to see those clues, especially if you're not used to the sound of a dull needle and you think, oh, I need to take my machine in for repair. Well, what's the first thing that your technician is going to say, ask of you? Well, when's the last time you changed your needle? Yes, it's important to change the needle. So make that a practice. Be aware of the clues to change the needle. In the little SCHMETZ ABC Pocket Guide, on page 37 is a wonderful picture of a terrible, worn-out needle. And I think even virtually, you can see how dull this needle is. It's got a super burr on it, right on the lip of the needle. And you can definitely see all these striations and burrs. So change the needle. And, changing the needle, it's one inexpensive repair that you can do yourself. I mean, how much does a pack of needles cost? You're spending, just a few dollars for each needle. And it's something that you can do yourself. Either you, with your fingers, unscrew the needle holder, or maybe you have to use a little screwdriver, or maybe your machine has a little lever that you pull up or down. So that's a simple repair that you can do yourself. So don't be intimidated, just change the needle. Now, the question always comes up of, slightly used needles, because sometimes, when we sew, we don't use a needle to its full life. So you set a needle aside, you've changed to a different needle type, and you come back to that original needle. And you wonder, oh, should I have thrown that needle out? Is that slightly used needle still sewing worthy? How do you know before you put that needle back into your machine? So there's two little things that you can do. You can take that slightly used needle and just run it across your fingernail. And if it leaves a scratch, well, you know you've got a burr and you need to toss that needle. Or if you have a pair of old hose, and will we ever wear hose again? I don't know. I don't think so. If you've got a pair of old hose or tights or maybe a jersey swatch, just run that slightly used needle across your fabric, and if it snags, you know you've got a burr and you need to toss it. So bottom line, needles don't last forever. Which brings us to, well, how do you organize slightly used needles? Well, a few years ago, we bought the Grab It Sewing Tool Company. You're probably familiar, since I'm right here at my sewing table, I can show you my own. You're probably familiar with the Grab It magnetic pin cushion. Well, one of their other products is the Grab It My Pad, the Grab It My Pad. And these you can order also through Jennifer and Sandy. They've got these. If their stock is low, they can bring these in for you. This is called the Grab It My Pad. And actually, this is the one that I keep here in my sewing room. So let me just walk you through it. This is a super thick piece of felt. And then we imprint all these different cells. First, we imprint the needle type. So this one here is labeled universal. And within each needle type, we have cells identified by needle sizes. So now you can organize your slightly used needle by needle type and needle size. If you have an older needle that doesn't have the color coding and you take it out of the package to use in your sewing machine, you can use this flower head pin that comes with the My Pad, place the flower head pin in the cell that identifies your needle type and size. So I just slid this into quilting size 7511. There's also a little area here in the corner where you can put twin needles because there's not a listing or a cell for twin needles. So what I do is I just take a little Post-it note or a piece of paper and I just identify the needle type and the size and then just run the needle through. So I've been using some twin needles lately. So keep this in mind. It's an easy, inexpensive way to organize your slightly used needles. The other two products that I'll just bring to your attention that are also Grab It sewing tools. I think you're probably all familiar with the Grab It Bobbin Saver. I know that you can get this at the store. This holds, about 20 bobbins. But over the years, we've had a lot of requests that even though people like the Bobbin Saver, they wanted something that was more efficient with the space. So we came up with the Bobbin Saver Square. And it's the same flexible plastic that just hugs your bobbin. So you can put, I should have it's not handy. You can keep your bobbins organized by thread type or color, etc. right here in the Bobbin Saver Square. Whether it doesn't matter if they're plastic or metal. Now this Bobbin Saver Square holds over 60 bobbins. Then the sewing machine companies came out with larger bobbins, right? They came out with jumbo bobbins. So now we have the jumbo bobbin saver square. And you can see, if you compare the channels, you can see that the jumbo bobbin saver square has a larger channel for the larger bobbin. So these are two great projects just to organize your bobbins, and they're both by the Grab It Sewing Tool Company. So, and I know that these are available too. So what else can I tell you? Let's see. Let me see if there's some more questions. Oh, okay, here. Alpha has a question. So will the nonstick be a good needle for vinyls or leathers? Okay, so the super nonstick is a great needle choice for vinyls, machine embroidery, machine applique, oilcloth, hoop and loop tape, and definitely with your vinyls. Because when you're sewing on vinyl, what happens? The vinyl gets hot and it has a tendency to hug your needle. So now the vinyl's moving up and down on the needle. So with the super nonstick, your needle's going to slide through the vinyl more easily. When the super nonstick needles were first introduced, I was in Washington State at the Sewing and Stitchery Expo, and Connie came up to me and she goes, "Oh my gosh," she goes, she makes a lot of vinyl tote bags that she sells on Etsy, etc. And she goes, "Rhonda, one of the weirdest things about needles is that when I'm sewing through vinyl, that the needle squeaks." Well, I never heard of a squeaky needle before. And I said, well, give these super nonstick needles a try. So she actually went home that night and made up some samples for me using thick vinyl. And the super nonstick worked really beautifully for her. And they did not squeak. So as far as sewing on leather, the leather needle is special because the leather needle has what's referred to as a cutting point. So you really need that cutting point to stitch through leather. Now, you could use a leather needle like for multimedia sewing. You know, it's going to actually cut through any woven fabrics and fibers and will definitely leave a hole. But if that's the look that you are that you want, then leather's a possible choice for you. But the leather needle has a cutting point specifically made for sewing with leather. So thank you for asking that. Okay, are there any other questions? Wow, the hour really flies by. Who's overwhelmed by needles? So Cooper's asking, what is the best needle? What is the best needle for thick fabric, fringe, and needlepoint leathers? Thick fabric. Okay, for thick fabric, you've got a, I always like to say with SCHMETZ, you have options. So when you're working with thick fabric, you probably want that reinforced blade. So there's two needle choices that have that reinforced blade. That would be your jeans, also known as a denim needle, and also the super nonstick needle has that reinforced blade. So that would probably work for your thick fabric, and also, what was the rest of that? Needlepoint leathers, which have a tendency to be rather dense. For fringe, well, what kind of fringe is that? Again, you could certainly try a universal needle, maybe a jeans needle, or the super nonstick. So it just kind of depends on the characteristics of your fringe. Oh, Susan, thank you for asking what needle to use with Minky, because sometimes I forget to address Minky and Cuddle fabric. In fact, tonight, the vest I'm wearing, because it is cold and windy here in the Chicago area, I'm wearing a Cuddle vest. So this is a plush fabric by Shannon Fabrics. They don't pay me to mention Shannon Fabrics, but I just so happens that I love to sew with the Cuddle Plush fabrics. And part of the success, a lot of the success, most of the success with sewing with Minky and Cuddle fabrics has to do with your needle choice. And you want to use a stretch needle. And specifically, you want to use a size 90-14 when you're sewing with Minky and with Cuddle fabrics. The stretch needle has that medium ballpoint that works with that plush fabric. And it also has that narrower eye and a deeper scarf. So you can get a cleaner stitch with the stretch needle. So thanks, Susan, for asking that. I don't know why I sometimes forget to address that when I'm such a fan of Minky.
Hey, Rhonda.
Yes.
Oh, Peggy had a question. How do you pick between the super non-stick and a chrome needle?
Oh, okay. Good question. You know, a lot of it has to do with personal preference. You know, I always like to say with SCHMETZ, you have options. For the general rule of thumb would be if you're working with something sticky, well, then you want the super non-stick needle. Something sticky, work with. So for machine embroidery, machine applique, vinyl, etc., the super non-stick is a great needle choice. With the chrome, which does resist heat and wear, now with chrome, you've got a wider selection of needles to choose from. You've got seven different needle types: Microtex, stretch, jersey, universal, jeans, embroidery, and quilting. I think that's all of them. So you're going to have a wider selection in both needle type and also in size with the chrome needles. Good question.
And then we also had another question. What needle do you recommend for specialty threads like metallics?
With metallics, oh, I like to answer that question. Well, SCHMETZ has a metallic needle. It's called the metallic needle. And as we saw earlier, let me see here. As we saw earlier, the metallic needle has that elongated eye because your thread, your needle is stitching really fast and furious, right? So there's a lot of stress on the thread as it's passing through the eye of the needle. So with that elongated eye, you know, it's just easier for the thread to pass through the eye of the needle. Now, on this diagram here, you can see that the metallic and the top stitch have the same eye. But the truth is, metallic and top stitch are actually the same needle. The same needle, the same point, the same tip, the same needle eye. So you can use the metallic or top stitch for your metallic or specialty your specialty threads. Another option would be the super non-stick because it's got that extra large eye. So you've got a couple choices that you can use. Okay, Deb is asking if we can purchase the ABC needle book. Well, actually, I think all you have to do is go into the store and ask for it. Or if you're buying your needles from the website, the needles are bundled, or maybe it's just the bundles that come with the SCHMETZ ABC Pocket Guide. So yes, those are available, and you can get those from Jennifer and from Sandy. Yes. Because how can you remember all this? There's too much. All right. Kia is asking which size needle is best for batiks and cottons when piecing quilt tops. Okay. And she's asking 70, 80, or 90. All right. Well, let me give you my rule of thumb, that works for me, and maybe will help you also. So when I'm sewing, my everyday thread is a 40 weight thread. Everyday thread, 40 weight thread. And normally I use an 80-12 needle. So if I'm going to be working with a thread that is lighter than a 40 weight, then I know that I need to use a needle that's smaller than an 80-12. So I might go down to a 75 or a size 70-10. Again, using 80-10, 80-12 as my baseline for a 40 weight thread. If I'm working then with a heavier weight thread, then I know I need to move up a needle size or two to either 90-14 or size 100. So you kind of have to judge that yourself. And just to give you a live example, a couple years ago, I did a project, a year-long quilt block project through my local quilt shop. And I used K-facet fabrics, which I love, love, love. And okay, I just jumped right in. I was just so excited. I just started to sew up my blocks and I'm going, I had my thread, I had my 80-12 needle, and I'm thinking, this doesn't feel right, this doesn't look right, and it doesn't sound right. So I took another, actually I was using a Microtex 80-12 needle. So I took another Microtex 80-12 out of the same pack and I got the same result. And I'm thinking, whoa, that is odd, odd, odd. So as you can imagine, now it's probably like 1 o'clock in the morning, but I have a pretty nice stash of SCHMETZ needles. So I grabbed a Microtex 70, size 70-10, and guess what? Sewed like butter. Wonderful, precise stitches. There was no hesitation. The fabric was not being pushed down into the throat plate, and the machine was just humming, sewing like butter. So sometimes you just have to break your own rules. There's no police saying you must use this needle. And what needle may be a favorite for you may not work for your friend, because we sew on different types of fabrics. We might even be working with similar cotton fabrics, but there's differences also in the thread. There's differences in the way we feed our fabric into the machine. You might kind of push or pull your fabric. And then our machines have personality. So even though Microtex 80-12 works best for me on project A, doesn't mean that if you're working on a similar project that that you'll get the same results. You might have to go down or up a needle size. So you need to be flexible. So again, with batiks, I would use a Microtex needle because it has that very slim, acute point that's just going to pierce through that fabric beautifully, because generally batiks still have a lot of dye in them. So that very slim, acute point of the Microtex will just penetrate through all those dyes and the batiks quite easily. So you'll have to test whether it's a size 70 or 80. All right. Wow, that was a long answer. So Joanne said she missed the what needle to use for minky. So you're going to use a stretch size 90-14 for minky and for cuddle fabrics. Yep, that needle will make a world of difference, because when you're sewing, what happens to your minky? First of all, you need to pin it well. It has a tendency to slide, but you want that needle to just go through that fabric really easily. So the stretch 90-14 is the preferred needle. Susan's asking if you can use a metallic needle on the embroidery machine when using metallic thread, and absolutely. I know a lot of people like to use a top stitch or a metallic needle when they're doing machine embroidery. Absolutely. You can also try the super non-stick. Okay, so Jennifer just answered that again. Alpha's asking what needle to use for upholstery or outdoor fabrics. Your needle of choice, I think it comes down to 2 needle types. That would be the jeans needle. You need a heavy duty needle with that reinforced blade, and also the super non-stick would be a great needle choice also. And oh, thank you, Joanne. Joanne is saying thank you so much. Okay. Any other questions? So again, all the needles that I've talked about tonight, you can go right on the website, or you can go into the store and you can buy these already bundled. There's the Sewing with Knits bundle. There's the Piecing and Quilting bundle. And there's also the Super Non-Stick. And each bundle comes with the luggage tag and the SCHMETZ ABC Pocket Guide. And I know they've got some special discounted prices that are available through, if I remember correctly, April 10th, is it? Correct me if I'm wrong, but
April 10th, that's correct.
April 10th. Okay, great, thanks. And also the SCHMETZ ABC Pocket Guide, just go in and ask for it. It has a wealth of information. I'll also just point out that what we did was we photographed all the different needle types. We tell you what sizes are available, what the color codes are, what the special features are of each of the needles. And again, this is for home sewing machines. At the bottom of page 6 and running for the next few pages is a list or a little reference of what needle to use with what fabric, because how do you remember it all? On page 3 is, how to read the needle package, and you remember what 13705H is. That's your needle system that our home sewing machines require. That's a flat shank needle with that scarf. Inside, you'll also find a listing of all of the chrome needles that are available. You'll find the wonderful diagram about the eyes of the needle, so you don't have to remember that. And then you've got the SCHMETZ color chart. So now you don't have to remember that either. And then I just have to also point out, that's right, needles don't last forever. So here are the clues on page 37, so you know when to change your needle. Okay, let's see. Oh, okay. 5 needle types. 5 needle types for piecing and quilting. Yep, sure, I'll go through those real quick. You've got the universal needle. You've got the jeans needle for your flannels and your heavy raggy quilts. The jeans needle has that reinforced blade. You've got the top stitch needle, which has that elongated eye, so there's less stress on the thread passing through the eye. You've got the quilting needle, which has that special tapered point specifically designed for piecing and for quilting. And you've got the Microtex needle with the very slim acute point. So those are your 5 needle types for piecing and for quilting. Okay, well, I think that kind of wraps things up. I want to say thank you for being here tonight. If you're curious about what kind of sewing I like to do, I have a personal blog, which is sewmorestitches.com. I'm not selling anything. I just document some of my sewing projects and a few other things, like some of the foods that I make and the travels that I used to do. It's all on my sewmorestitches.com blog. If you're interested, you could go in and click 2020 Sewing sewing or 2021 sewing to see what projects I've finished up during the pandemic. Big year for me to finish up a lot of UFOs. I had a 17-year-old Thangles project, little 1-inch Thangles. In fact, I've got it right here. You may be familiar with Thangles. So these are little 1-inch pieces. So it only took me 17 years and a pandemic to finish it. In my sewing room, I have 48 hand-stitched sashiko blocks. They've been done for 15 years, but it took the pandemic for me to actually put all these panels together. And so now I have this beautiful quilt hanging in my sewing room with the traditional indigo and the traditional sashiko stitches. So take a look at the types of sewing that I like. I do love to sew and quilt, and even more than that, I love talking to you about needles. And I hope I've inspired you and elevated your confidence in your needle selection. I realize that needles are not glamorous, they're not sexy, and they're not romantic. So I say thank you for sticking with us tonight.
Thanks for all the great information, Rhonda, and for everyone for joining us.
Okay, stay safe, everyone, and healthy. And so SCHMETZ, thanks for using SCHMETZ needles, and you know where to go buy your needles. Go visit Jennifer and Sandy. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Rhonda.
Thank you, Sandy. Thank you, Rhonda.
Thank you.